everyone, and welcome to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I'm the advertising manager, and I'm your host today. I want to thank everybody for being here. We want to thank our sponsor today. Sorry, I've lost my notes. See what happens when you take 2 weeks off. You completely forget what you're supposed to do. Anyway, I want to thank our sponsor today from San Antonio Handweavers Guild. They have been so generous in sponsoring several episodes, and we thank them. An amazing guild. You should check them out. So thank you, San Antonio. We appreciate it. Today we have with us our guest today is Sara Goodman. Sara, I promise the rest of this will go smoothly. Sara is an amazing fiber artist, and you will see that today. And she's inspired by traditional cultures. She combines her knowledge of natural dyes, surface design, weaving into one-of-a-kind pieces. Her work has been featured in major textile art productions, publications, and shown in national and international exhibits, including the Julie Artisans Gallery, the Society of Arts and Crafts, the Cambridge Artists Cooperative, the China National Silk Museum, and much more. She is a juried member of the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen. She is the co-founder of the Northern New England Fibershed, and she has taught at Arrowmont, Maiwa School of Textiles, and the Marshfield School of Weaving. And also at the Pacific Northwest Art School. She's currently the lead dye instructor at the Sanborn Mills. Hi, Sara, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm confused and discombobulated, but I'm going to make it. It's going to be good.
We'll figure it out.
What is your favorite tea?
Well,
that one.
I have to say I don't have one favorite tea. I have a cupboard full of tea, but right now I'm drinking lemon zinger.
Ah, okay. Are you like some people that you have a winter tea and a summer tea?
No, it's more like this time of the day I can't drink caffeine, so I switched her,
Well, tell us, how did you get started in fiber?
It's hard to know when exactly to say, because I had a grandmother who traveled around the world. To Mexico. She also loved going to, I mean, she was born in 1896.
Wow.
She loved going to antique stores. She had a friend she used to go to Mexico with. She used to hand stitch beautiful little dresses for me when I was a little girl that she'd put embroidery strips on them that she found in various places. And she taught me how to crochet. So that things started with her was an appreciation of handmade things and things from other cultures. And then when I was in high school, my older brother had a friend who came and stayed with us who had dropped out of college and was traveling around the world. And he spent a year in Indonesia collecting Indonesian textiles from all over the Indonesian archipelago. And I just know as a 16-year-old, I stayed up all night with him one night, and him regaling me with stories of shadow puppets and gamelan music and ikat textiles, and explaining how young people didn't want to do this anymore, that the villages were emptying out and everyone wanted to move to the city and get a motorbike. And I don't know, something just hit me. I was like, I'm going to go there. I'm going to learn how to do this. This can't happen. I want to stop this from happening. And I didn't get to Indonesia for the first time until I was 34 years old, but I think I became a weaver because of him. And he's now like a world-class art collector and expert in Indonesian textiles. So,
did you ever tell him the influence you had?
Recently, this is a kind of a sideline story, but I recently met a young woman, a friend of my son's, who grew up in Texas, and her family knows his family. And so he gave me his contact information. He runs something called Art of Our Ancestors. And I wrote to him explaining all this, but he did not write me back.
And now he's even being talked about on Textiles and Tea. I mean,
so who knows? Maybe
he's missing it. He's missing it.
Yeah, maybe the word will get back to him. I don't know.
That's true. You produce utilitarian work as well as artwork or wall art, as some people call it. And these are two examples. They're just gorgeous. What is the attraction of doing either one? And is one more, do you like doing one more than the other?
You know, for me, the whole project is making cloth. And then it's always a question mark for me, what do I do with the cloth that I make? I just like to figure out how to make the cloth. I actually see an image of what I want to make inside my head, and then I figure out how to make it. And so, you know, I've made all kinds of things, pillows, blankets, clothing, things that just hang on the wall. And really the end product is less important to me than the making of the cloth itself.
I can understand that. That's a great way of looking at it. So if I usually ask people, are you more of a pattern person or a color person? And as I was looking at your work, you're strong in both. And so maybe I should ask, how do you work the two together so beautifully? Because I know some people get lost in the pattern and some people get lost in the color. You do a lovely job of blending both of them, as you can see in these two works.
So the way I look at this is that where you have to begin any project is with your concept of design, that it's the design that underlies all the choices you make after that, whether it's the fiber, the colors, the technique, you know, the finishing, all of that. And so the pattern and color work together. You know, on the coat on the right, that's double weave. So, and I use double weave a lot as a structure because I like how strong it is graphically. So the orange and yellow and red is a painted warp that is one of the layers of double weave, and then the other layer is solidly blue. And so it makes it look like you're kind of looking through windows at these colors that are changing. That's the ikat, as the color changes as it moves up the warp. So I can't say that I use one or the other. They have to strengthen each other. They have to work together.
I know I say this all the time, but I just would love to see these pieces in person, just to see how they work and the color and everything. So this next image is shibori dyeing. So would you tell us a little bit, what is shibori for those who may not know? You don't have to do a workshop, but just a brief. And what is the attraction of shibori for you?
So shibori means shaped resist in Japanese. And so we Americans know it as tie-dye. You take a piece of fabric, you wind rubber band around it, put it in a dye pot. Where the rubber band is, it's not going to take the dye. So you're making a pattern on already produced cloth by manipulating that fabric somehow. This piece that we're looking at here is called Karamatsu Shibori. There's a fabulous book by Yoshiko Wada called Shibori, Japanese Shaped Resist, I think. And it's really the encyclopedia of shibori techniques. A lot of us who do shibori started with Yoshiko and that book. And so you can make stitches and then you pull the stitches really tight, or you fold the fabric in a certain way, like origami, and clamp it, or you wrap string around it on a pole and squish it together. But that fabric has to be under pressure somehow. And it's the pressure that keeps the dye. You always have to be thinking about, where do I want the dye to go and where do I want to keep the dye from going? And then you can invent ways to do this, and there are literally hundreds of very specific techniques with wonderful names for how to do this. And you asked, why do I do this? So weaving is very precise. If you're not precise, it just comes out messy. Shibori is much more spontaneous. So I like having both this very accurate, exacting, some might say tedious process of weaving versus this much more open, organic, spontaneous thing with the dyeing and the shibori. Because no matter what I try to do with shibori, it always takes on a life of its own and does its thing.
I love that. I love that description or explanation. That's great because I always think of it as kind of like magic that I'm not sure what's going to happen. It's just, let's see what happens kind of
Yeah.
thing. So that's great. That's good. I like that.
Right. I think we as artists, we always have to be asking ourselves, what's going to happen if I do this?
Yes.
So.
Um, this next image is going to be of a scarf. And what I loved about this scarf is it just shows how well you know or how comfortable you are with different materials. Like this has got ribbon through it, and it really changes the color as well as the texture. And I was curious that did you understand your understanding of this did that come from trial and error, or did you just really know what was going to happen when you put these two materials together?
I knew what was going to happen. Yeah, this was a very deliberate plan. And so this all started out as white silk yarn and white silk ribbon. You can buy different thicknesses of undyed silk ribbon from Trenway Silks. And I have worked with their ribbons a lot. And then I can make the natural dye extracts, powders into paint. You can thicken them and make them into paint. So I stretch my undyed warps out on my long table. I usually dye about 15 yards at a time. And I put the silk yarn warp next to a separate warp that was the ribbons. And then I paint them side by side, but I deliberately make it so the colors aren't moving along in the same way, so that I know when I put them together, the ribbon is going to stand out from the background. And then also the silk is threaded 1, 2, 3, 4, and the silk ribbon is threaded on 5 and on 6. So it can make a little bit longer of a float. You can see that in the picture on the right.
Yeah, yeah.
So also it will pop. So again, I'm using the structure to emphasize the color.
So how do you design your work? Do you use a computer? Do you draw it all out ahead of time? You know exactly what you're going to do?
I see it in my head first, and then I draw pictures. Sometimes I color it in with colored pencils, and then I move to the computer.
Well, we have a couple of images of some amazing work, and we've got the overall picture, and then we also have just one of the panels. And that's why I was curious about designing this, because the panels had to match up to do this.
Yeah, this was tricky. It was tricky, especially because they are all backed. And so I had to figure in the seam allowance on the edges
Oh, wow. Yeah.
that it would fit when I sewed the backing on. So, yeah. And so this is a combination of, like, all the water is a kind of shibori called a rashi shibori, that you wrap it around a pole. And then the mountains are all block printed. And that was all using a little bit of iron in with the mordant to make those darker colors. And then the sky is all yellow, mostly because I hadn't really played around with the different yellow possibilities of natural dyes, and I just decided to make the sky yellow. Plus, there's a mordant. I was involved in a project in Indonesia where we were using a plant called Simplocus. Simplocus has a very high concentration of aluminum in it, and so traditional cultures use plants for mordants. I don't know how much you want me to get into the technical aspects of dyeing, but before you dye something with a natural material, you have to treat it with a mordant, some kind of mineral substance that makes that dye. People always think natural dyes don't last, and that's only because they haven't been mordanted properly. The whole knowledge and skill is in the mordanting. And there are plants that are natural bioaccumulators of aluminum. Aluminum is very prevalent in the Earth's crust. And so my friends in Indonesia were working to bring this Simplocus powder to market, to people in the West. And so that was something that I worked on with them. And then I was using the Simplocus to mordant all that fabric that I dyed with the yellow, just for my own experimenting.
Well, your travel experiences have really impacted on your work. And this next piece, I believe, is block dyeing that you learned a lot about and continue from Indonesia. So would you talk about how you began using this technique?
Well, this is not block printing at
No,
all.
this isn't it. Mandy, can we go to the next image?
But we should come back to this because this is
Okay.
there we go. So, I started doing block printing, I think it was from the influence of the work of Michel Garcia, who's a French natural dyer who any of us who've been doing natural dyes know Michel. I've done a lot of work with him just first as his student, and then we worked on the Simplocus project together. And so it was learning how to make blocks from Michel. And so on the left is the mordant. You can make different concentrations of alum and iron. Those are the only two mordants I use. People use others, titanium and chrome and copper and stuff. I only use alum and iron because they're the safest, and in different concentrations I can get the effects that I want, so why make things more complicated? So I did various printings of the mordants on there, and then that piece of fabric first went into a yellow dye bath, which isn't pictured here. And the pattern jumps out at you because of the mordant. The leaves are done with iron, so they're darker. And then it's all over dyed with indigo in an indigo vat. The only way you can really get a good green with natural dyes is to put down a yellow and then combine it with indigo. And so I was dyeing pieces that were like 30 inches square of silk and then cutting them into the strips that then became a tapestry. I don't know if we have the picture of this, the finished piece here.
I don't think we do.
Okay. All right. Yeah, this was this very complicated tapestry that then I stitched embroidery all over it and everything.
Well, you said you wanted to go back to that other image, and that had to do with,
Oops.
There we go. So what was the attraction of this part of the world for you?
Well, this is Indonesia.
Uh-huh.
This is in a little village on the island of Bali called Tenganan. And so I do a very elementary form of ikat where I just paint the warp and the colors blend into each other. I'm not trying to make a pattern at all. But the ikat, and there are cultures all over the world that do this, where they're dyeing pattern into the threads before they even go on the loom. Those of us who are weavers, it's kind of insane. And so in Japan, it's called kasuri, and in Guatemala, it's called hasbe, but in Indonesia, it's called ikat. And this is compound ikat, which means the fabric, the warp threads were dyed, and also the weft threads were dyed. And then it's where the resisted threads match up, you get this very distinct pattern. So the unbelievable control, it's just mind-blowing.
It is.
And this woman on the left who we went and we visited her, that piece was the very first piece of compound ikat that she wove when she was 16 years old. And she sold it to me. And I asked them, what's for sale? I'd like to buy a piece of this. And that she brought that out, and that's the one I chose, and I paid for it. And then she told me it was the first piece of ikat she'd ever made. And I was like, oh no, I can't take that from you. It's so special, but she really wanted me to have it. So now I have it, but it's one of my unbelievable treasures in life is that piece of ikat from her.
It's just amazing. I don't know how they do it.
And I don't know enough about Indonesian culture. Is all these little figures have symbolism and meaning in the culture. And that's part of what I love about the place of textiles in traditional culture is these textiles are revered. They all have ceremonial purpose, and all the images have spiritual significance. So it's just very, very special stuff.
Now, when you were there, did you do any classing? Did you get any instructions while you were over there, or did you?
A tiny little bit, just kind of, they sat me down. And so I have these friends, Jean Howe and William Ingram, who have an NGO called Threads of Life and it's based in Ubud and Bali. And they've been there now for 30 years, probably. And they've been working all over the Indonesian archipelago, getting traditional communities to make museum quality textiles again. They were stopping making them. And they said, you know, go back in your grandmother's trunk and find these textiles, and we're going to recreate them. And so they've been working with these communities for all this time. They have a beautiful gallery in Ubud. If you ever go to Bali, you have to go there. They also have a foundation called the Babali Foundation. And so they're working, doing education. They're working on preserving dye plants and the Simplocus, working with the Australian botanical gardens. I can't say enough about how brilliant these people are and the amazing work that they've done. Just Google Threads of Life. And so I went over there the first time. The connection was made through the organization Warp, Weave a Real Peace, told me to get in touch with them. We immediately became fast friends. And so then I went back again, and I brought 12 people on a trip, on a tour, and we went around, and that was absolutely marvelous. And then Michelle Garcia and I did the Simplocus project. So Michelle and I went back and worked in the village where the Simplocus is collected. So I've been there 3 times, and I miss it. I want to try to get back again someday, but they're still going at it. They're doing amazing work. And you can buy these textiles now online, Threads of Life. You can buy stuff from their store on the website.
Okay. They've just posted Weave a Real Piece. And I put Threads of Life in the chat also, so that people can Google these organizations and check them out.
Good. I see Susan Weltman here on the chat. So hi, Sue.
It was interesting because I think in 2004, you decided to stop using chemical dyes and use natural dyes. Can you talk about what was behind that decision for you?
Mm-hmm. 2 things that come to mind right now. So I'd been teaching public school, and I stopped teaching in 2004 and was able to devote myself full time to this. And that's when I took my first trip to Indonesia. And I'd known, but at that point I was using fiber reactive dyes to paint my warps. And I'd known about natural dyes. I'd taken an indigo class like way back in 1980 or something. And then when I went to Indonesia, I was just so impressed with what they were doing with natural dyes. And I just was really inspired by that. And then, not to insert too much politics into this, the election happened where George Bush beat Al Gore, and that was really devastating to me. And I felt like I wanted to do something that made a statement with my work, but I'm not somebody who makes protest art. But I just felt like I wanted to be more conscious about how I worked and my methods and materials. And the environment is very important to me, and I didn't want to be using chemicals anymore. So, and when I started it, I didn't have any sense of the size of the natural dye community and what was out there, and jumped right in to this incredible natural dye revival that's happening all over the world. So it's been more fascinating than I ever could have dreamed.
Did you feel like you had a big learning curve going from chemical to natural, or was it kind of an easy transition for you?
It wasn't that big a deal. No, there were just some basic things I needed to learn. And actually, one of the things that I love to do, and I've done this a couple of times, is to work with people who are chemical dyers, who want to make the transition to natural dyes, because they already have a good studio practice and they have a good image in their head of what the results they want. And so I love the challenge of somebody showing me, a strip of paper with a color on it saying, how do I make this color with natural dyes? Because I'm convinced that there's not a color on the planet that I can't get using some combination of natural dyes.
I love your passion. That's wonderful. Because you're right. A lot of people are like, well, I'm not doing natural dyes. They don't have the colors. They don't have the intensity. It won't last.
They're going to wash out, the
Yeah.
color, blah. It's just not true. It's just not true.
All right. Way to go, natural dyes. Well, since that time, it's been what, 20 years?
20 years.
And what have you seen that's changed over that amount of time in natural dyeing?
Well, the internet has made it possible for us to be in touch with each other all over the world, which is incredible. And there's marvelous places like Maiwa and Botanical Colors and Stony Creek Colors, Sarah Bellows, and just a lot of places around the world that are dedicated to natural dyes. So for the last 5 years, I've been working at a place called Sanborn Mills Farm here in New Hampshire. That's both a working farm and a craft school. And we built a natural dye studio that I help design and equip, and we grow dye plants. So there's just a lot of interest. And now, my generation is aging out. And so the next generation is coming along. And so people are really interested in sustainable everything and doing things with the planet in mind. And so there's a huge interest. People are using kitchen scraps and trying to see what colors they can get out of that, avocado pits and onion skins and things, or just in your local environment, what color is in the local plants that are growing right around you. A lot of people are starting to grow their own dye plants. I mean, at Sanborn Mills, they grow whatever plants I ask them to. So that's pretty great to have a gardener who asks me every spring, what do you want this year? But my thing is to get the colors I want, like really intense colors. And because I live here in Northern New England, we don't have cochineal bugs. We can grow indigo, we can grow madder, we can grow weld, but I don't have a problem importing dyestuffs from around the world. I care about supporting the growers who are in India and Peru and wherever, who are trying to make a living growing these dye plants for us. So, but here, let me show you this thing over here. So one of the classes I teach at Sanborn Mills is called Harvesting Color. It's at the end of the season in September. And so we go out with big buckets and we pick the plants that have been growing. So, and we also forage. So these are colors made from fresh walnut hulls, so really rich brown. This is the yellow you get from weld. So what this is this is the main color. This is this color in indigo, and this is this color in iron. So this is the range of colors we're getting just from one dye substance. Here's, I'll show you something orangey in here. Here's lac extract. I mean, like, what's not to like there? That's an insect that grows in Southeast Asia. Here's Dyer's coreopsis that we grew in our garden at Sanborn Mills. So, so you take the class and you end up with this set of sample cards and the knowledge to get all those colors. So it's very fun.
And this is Sanborn Mills in
Loudon, New Hampshire, just a little bit northeast of Concord, New Hampshire, 2 hours from Boston. So it's sanbornmills.org is the website. And all our classes for next year are on the website. I teach there. Kathy Hattori is going to teach there from Botanical Colors. A whole bunch of people come. We've had fantastic people come. And you can stay there. We have a dormitory. It's all farm to table food. It's marvelous.
Yeah, so it sounds like if somebody, and I guess that's the thing, when I first started working at HGA 15 years ago, the dye books were limited. And a lot of times they were like, oh, this is how you dye wool. So forget about trying to figure out anything else. And it was pretty limited. And I just love it now that there's all these resources as well as the internet to kind of hold your hand and walk you through natural dyeing. Whereas before it was good luck. Here's a little bit of knowledge, go for it.
There's really great resources. I would be remiss in not mentioning the work that Catherine Ellis and Joy Botrop have done together. Their book, The Art and Science of Natural Dyes. We had Catherine come to Sanborn Mills, Ellen Noble. There's really great people who've come. Annalisa Hedstrom was there. Gasali Adeyemo was there last summer. So we're trying to get, and if you're interested in teaching,
there you go.
You can go on the website and fill out an application to teach, or if there's somebody you want to take a class with, let us know. So
you you're a woman of passion. As I read about you and kind of figured out what you'd been doing. And the one thing I was struck by is your traveling, because you travel a lot to learn like firsthand about dyeing or the weaving or whatever. And I was thinking, you really can't get a lot of that information at home. You wouldn't have to really travel. So I was wondering, what else is it about the traveling that attracts you to do that?
Uh,
Especially like Bali. I mean, that's not easy to get to.
there's nothing more marvelous than being in someone's home in India or Peru who, I remember being in a little mountain village in Peru visiting these drop spinners, and I couldn't speak to the women, but I asked them if I could take the spindle and started spinning. I was on a hiking trip, I wasn't on a textile trip, and she was amazed, and everyone else on the trip was amazed at this connection that you have in another country when you can't even necessarily share the same language, but you understand this love of textiles together.
Mhm.
It's so incredible. I feel like I'm not being very articulate about it.
No.
I mean, I also just feel like we live in a world now that's so filled with division and finger pointing, and so for me to get out of this country, I if you don't have a passport, get yourself a passport, go somewhere. You just need to broaden your sense of what's possible and how other people do things, and then textiles is your way into the culture, but you could do it by the food, or I've gone to places just to go hiking, or the music, but when you really connect with the people, get out of just being an American tourist and get to
Mm.
know, have a reason to have real interaction with the people who live there. That's the best thing in my life, I have to say.
So you said that your brother's friend got you fired up about Indonesia. Where was the first place you went outside the country? How old were you?
I was 19 years old and I went to England. Which makes me laugh now. It was my junior year abroad from college.
Oh, okay.
High school kids are going to Nepal now, and I was, oh, so brave. I went to England. Oh, wow. But then after that, I went to France and Italy on that same trip. Hitchhiked in the French countryside by myself with my backpack. I think of some of the crazy things I did, and it's like, oh my gosh, you're lucky you're okay. But, it was a different time then too. And, I the first really big textile thing. I mean, I've been to Mexico so many times I can't count. Guatemala, Peru, Japan, India twice, Nepal, China, lots of Europe. Um, yeah, Indonesia.
Well, if I can, I want to jump back again. There was another question about color, and I forgot to ask you, but I do want to ask you this. And I'm always curious when I meet dyers, do you think learning about dye makes you a better colorist when it comes to weaving color? Or do you think they're not that related?
Well, I'm very sensitive to color. And I'll say that being a natural dyer has spoiled me for um, buying commercially dyed yarn. A few years ago, I wove a piece with yarn that I bought, some Zephyr silk, that Jagger spun Zephyr stuff that's the silk wool. And I didn't want to deal with dyeing it. And now I look at that piece and it's like, oh, wow, those colors, they're just like screaming at me. I wish I had taken the time to dye them myself. So the other thing about being a natural dyer is I know so much more about botany and about plants and how plants grow. And that's a whole nother aspect of it is the science and the natural history of plants. And then the history of dyes that have been used in other cultures. Like I was at the Musée du Cluny in Paris a few years ago looking at the unicorn tapestries. And I had been starting to think that, really the only dyes you really need are madder root for red, weld for yellow, and indigo for blue. And then you can make brown and green and whatever else you need. And so often you go into museums and they, on the little descriptor. It doesn't really tell me what you want to know. But the unicorn tapestries, it said madder, weld, and indigo were the only dyes used in those tapestries. And I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting and going all the way back to that point in time, and I'm still using those same dyes that they were using back then.
I agree with you. I wish there was more information like that. And that's great that you can see what they used. It just makes you appreciate more what they did, what they've accomplished.
Yeah, and to have enough knowledge to understand it, that's very satisfying.
Well, that's true. That's true. I mean, I've taken so many dyeing classes, but I realize my knowledge is about this big still, because you go to those classes and realize what you don't know.
Right.
So,
well, I still take classes every once in a while because I always learn something. Always. I mean, last summer when Gasali was with us at Sanborn Mills Farm, I was his assistant, but really it was such a treat for me to work with him. It was just, he's so generous. If you ever get a chance to take a class with him, he's just marvelous person.
well, you talked earlier about some of the organizations that you're involved with, and there's several of them where those organizations want to improve the lives of communities through fiber. So can you talk a little more about how important is it for you that there's giving back, not just weaving, not just dyeing, but giving back when it comes to your fiber?
Well, I was on the board of the Good Weave Foundation for 6 years, which is an NGO dedicated to eliminating child slave labor in the handmade carpet industry in South Asia. I've said that so many times, but it's a mouthful. So, there's a lot of child labor in this world, and so Good Weave is dedicated to rescuing the children who are kind of sold into slavery at carpet looms. These are kids who've been abandoned by their families. And so Good Weave rescues, they try to reunite them with the families, but it's usually impossible. And so they bring them to a rehabilitation center, pay for their education up through their time that they're 18 years old, and then helps them transition into adulthood, whether they want to be weavers or they want to go to university or do something else. Good Weave also provides daycare centers at the weaving workshop, so women can come with their little children and be right there where they're working. And so when I went to Nepal in 2010, I went with Mary Zikafus, who was also on the board with me, to visit the workshops that Good Weave supports in Nepal and also in India. And so we want to support families so that they can make enough money so they can send their children to school and feed them. We also want to pay the weavers well enough so that these textile traditions can continue, so it doesn't just all become mechanized. A hand woven, hand knotted pile carpet is a family heirloom. It's a marvelous thing, and we want to make it possible for people in those countries to make a living. So I have a slightly different perspective on this notion that we want to have everything here in America, that because I feel so connected to these cultures in other countries that are making museum quality textiles, I want those cultures to survive. I'm very concerned about the de-skilling of our world. People don't know how to do anything anymore. They don't even know how to cook their own dinner anymore, much less, spin yarn and dye yarn and weave and sew. And so it's really important to me that people know how to make things from raw material, because of the knowledge, because of the artistry, because of the incredible satisfaction of just making something by yourself with your own hands. So I think when we go to another country, like I don't negotiate with people when I want to buy something in a market, because I want to give them money. The stuff they're selling is so inexpensive. I don't, and I could get it for less if I negotiated with them, but I want to give them money. I don't want to give them a handout. I want to pay them for their work. But people are living in just unbelievable poverty around the world, and it's really important for us as Americans to see that and to do what we can to help.
What was the first organization you think you got involved in?
Probably Warp, Weave a Real Piece. Deborah Chandler was my first ever weaving teacher.
Really? Oh my gosh.
I lived in Boulder, Colorado in 1979, right after I got out of college, and she was Debbie Redding then, and she had her little weaving shop in Boulder, and I took her 10-week weaving class. And we didn't stay in touch with each other, but then years later at some convergence, it might have been that convergence in 2004 in Denver, she was there as Deborah Chandler, and by then she was involved with Mayan Hands and living in Guatemala, and it was like, oh my God, you're my person. And she's one of the people who started Weave a Real Piece. And so, and through Warp, I've met my friends in Indonesia, Guatemala, Peru. I mean, Weave a Real Piece is a group of people, a lot of former Peace Corps who love textiles. And so a lot of them have little projects in. There's somebody who's working in Susan Davis in Morocco, working with rug weavers, and somebody else, Doris Stetcher in Bolivia. And so once a year they get together in person, but there's a newsletter, and there's also just a listserv. If you're going somewhere and you're like, I'm going to Timbuktu, and anybody know any textiles I should go see, someone will write back to you and tell you what to do. And so that's, if you're interested in international textiles, really join Warp. It's a great, great bunch of people and a very great way to connect up with people. Yeah, and then I got asked to be on the Good Weave board. And then
Good Weave is still going, right?
Good Weave is still going. Yes,
okay, good.
Absolutely. Very important for setting standards for child labor around the world. They have a really great website, goodweave.org, doing really work.
I'm sorry, does Good Weave get pushback from manufacturers? And I mean, some of these places, child labor, abusive child labor is such the norm. Did you ever get pushback from people going, why are you doing this?
Of course, it's incredibly political, and you know, there are laws in some countries that prohibit child labor, but they're not necessarily enforced. You know, all participation in Good Weave is all voluntary. We're working with people who want to work with us. All the carpets are certified, and you can trace your carpets back. So if you go to buy yourself a new carpet, if you go on the website now, it lists all the Western manufacturers who are having their designers who are having their carpets woven in Asia. They can trace your carpet that you buy all the way back to its source, and there should be a Good Weave label on the back of the carpet showing that it's a Good Weave certified carpet.
Oh, good, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that Mary and I both did after we stopped being on the Good Weave board is we were asked by a company called Inner Asia Rugs to design some carpets for them. The founder of that company is a man named Kesang Tashi, who was the first Tibetan graduate of Dartmouth College, which is around here where I live. And so Mary and I both designed a line of carpets for them that are still being manufactured in Asia and are being sold through Pompanousic Mills, which is a furniture maker here in Vermont. But you know, and mine are all based on shibori designs, and Mary's are based on her tapestries. They're, you know, pile carpets. They're gorgeous.
It's just so much out there that you just don't know about and ways to get involved. It's just wonderful. It's wonderful. I appreciate you sharing all this. I know a lot of people are asking how to get a hold of Warp, so we'll get that up.
Okay, great. And Tashi, you know, Tashi left Tibet when the Chinese invaded Tibet. I don't know where. They went to India and then they came over here. He went to Dartmouth. He was a banker in New York City, but then he wanted to give back to his community. And so when things started opening up in China a little bit, he went back to Galtung in his town in Tibet and started this carpet factory. So it's that same impulse to keep the tradition alive and give back to your community.
Yeah, yeah. Does he live in the US or does he live over there?
Unfortunately, Tashi has passed away.
Oh, no.
He did live here in Hanover, New Hampshire. He died a few years ago, but the company still exists and his family is carrying it on, and other people who work.
Oh, that's good to know. That's
Yeah.
good to know. All right. Weave a Real Piece is in chat now. So if you're interested and you want to see that, why don't we do some questions? How's
Okay.
that?
Sounds great.
We got several. Some of them may have been answered already, but we're going to find out. This is from Kate Mitchell. Are you creating and stockpiling your textiles and then combining them into one piece? I noticed that your lines sometimes have a shibori dye and the primary fabric and ikat. Are they designed at the same time? Ooh, lots of questions there.
So I think the lining, you mean for the coats?
Um,
Is that what she's asking about?
I'm not sure. I noticed that your lines sometimes have a shibori dye. I don't know if she means lining or not.
Yeah, because so the coats all have shibori dyed linings.
Okay.
And so I conceive of those pieces at
Oh,
once.
she did say linings, not lines. Sorry.
Right. And so I had to, I had to weave the fabric, I had to dye the yarn, I had to weave the fabric, I dyed the lining, and then put it all together. Those coats are all folkwear patterns because I'm not a dress designer and I like working with folkwear because that's again traditional fabric clothing shapes, Turkish coats and hipari jackets and kimonos and stuff. So yeah, I usually know what the end product is going to be when I start making it. Yeah.
But it sounds like you mix and match. It's not like you weave one piece and sew it together, that there's different pieces, different approaches and techniques that you combine into maybe one piece.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
All
those
right.
are complicated things. Yeah. Oh, the other thing that I haven't mentioned that I just want everyone to know about is the whole Fibershed movement.
Okay.
So Fibershed, for people who don't know, was started by Rebecca Burgess in Northern California with this notion of making local cloth, having the whole supply chain local, from producer fiber farmers to designers to finished product. And so that movement and that whole idea has gone around the world. That's another great, fascinating uh, website, fibershed.org. And so there are local Fibershed affiliates. And so a bunch of us out of Sanborn Mills Farm have started the Northern New England Fibershed, Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire. But we're connected to the national headquarters in California. And so that's a cool thing. And we had a design challenge a year ago to make something as local as we possibly could. So I have a friend who raises cashmere goats. So he gave me 3 pounds of cashmere. It was white, some of it was white and some of it was beige. And so of course I had to dye it all. So, and then I wove these shawls. So indigo, madder, marigold, and goldenrod, and weld, no goldenrod, and wove these shawls for our design challenge. But like, there's one person who won the first prize who grew her own flax and processed the flax, which is unbelievably labor intensive.
It is.
Wove a piece of fabric out of flax that she grew herself. So,
oh my gosh,
amazingly satisfying. So,
yeah. I would be one of those people. Well, I bought it locally. That's what I do.
So there are people who are really taking this idea of start to finish to the total extreme.
We got a how-to here, which it's quick, so I don't think it's Heidi Bennett. And she said, when you're mixing your 3 colors, she wants to know, do you mix them in the dye pot or do you dip them?
All different ways. It all depends. Sometimes I'm making the dye cold, sometimes it's hot, sometimes I'm painting with it. So it's all different ways. You'll have to take a class with me to find out.
There you go. There you go, Heidi.
3 days.
Take a class, learn it all, then we'll interview you too. There you go, Heidi. Jennifer, hi Jennifer, said 1 hour is not enough. I know, I know. And they want to know if we can ask you back again. Thank you, Jennifer. You're sweet. And it's true. Don't we all want to just sit around and talk with Sara for about an hour or 2 more?
Well, people are welcome to get in touch with me on their own. That's fine,
And we're all going to take your class.
Yeah,
so there we go.
I'm taking
this is from Chana. Chana, if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, I'm sorry. She wants to know, is there a potential for using natural dyes in digital printing?
That's out of my realm. I
Okay.
would not.
We'll just say yes.
I mean, people are making ink out of plant materials. That's not my thing, but there are people doing it. There's great resources out there, easy to find information, some really good books about making ink. And so I don't know why, if there's a way to get ink into a printer, I would think that you can, I guess.
Yeah.
I know.
Somebody wants to know, did you dye your scarf?
This is from an NGO in India called Living Blue. And
Oh,
this is also shibori on silk.
it's beautiful. What's it made out of?
It's silk.
Silk?
Yeah.
There you go, Marilyn. Take her workshop and she'll show you how to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, Liz, I'm not sure what your question is. What were the people's names in this WRT natural dyes?
WRT.
And then Heather came back and said Maiwa in Vancouver.
Okay.
I'm not sure if Liz is asking for
So
your resources or where you get your natural dyes.
Maiwa is Charlotte Kwan, and that's just a whole amazing world that you should know about if you don't know about it. She has a school of textiles. You can go to India with her. She makes gorgeous clothing, natural fiber, natural dye clothing. You can take really beautifully produced online classes now. A lot of people take her online class and then they come to us and take hands-on classes. It's a really nice combination. Maybe she's asking me about Threads of Life, those names, Jean Howe and William Ingram. I've said a lot of names of different people, so I don't know.
Oh, she came back and said that WRT, I'm out of it. Sorry, is with regards to. That's what that means.
Okay.
So she wanted to know names, so that she was glad about that. So we're
Okay.
giving her names. So there you go, Liz.
Okay.
And I encourage everybody, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this now, but I do encourage everybody to get on their mailing list. It's just, you end up drooling over their Maiwa's mailing list. You just, their classes and so much of it is free information. Yeah, that's a wonderful resource. And too bad I live on this coast, because if I lived on that coast,
yeah,
I'd be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, back to your piece, they had the ribbon. Now that was in the warp, right? The silk ribbon?
Yes.
Okay. Do you also do ribbon with the weft?
No, I've never really woven with the ribbon in the weft. I did make some wall hangings once that were entirely ribbon. The entire warp was ribbon and they were double weave. And I painted them, and but the weft was just regular yarn to kind of hold it all together.
Well, you're such a busy woman. What's next for you?
Well,
Other than all your classes.
I'm teaching 5 classes at Sanborn Mills next summer, and then I also here in Sandwich, New Hampshire, the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen, I teach there also. So that's going on. I'm building a house in Vermont with my partner. He's doing most of the building. I'm just cheerleading. So
Will you have fiber space there?
yeah, not as much as the studio I have here, where I live here. But I'll have a space of my own there. Yeah. So that will be good.
Travel?
I don't have any textile. Well, there's going to be another, Yoshiko Wada runs these shibori symposiums all over the world, and she's having another one in Basel, Switzerland in 2026. So shout out to Yoshiko. So I'm hoping to go to that, which means I'll probably want to make something for the show. So I need to get busy on that. I have some ideas percolating in my head about that. Otherwise, Peter and I are going to Austria to go skiing in February, but I'm going to New York City on Thursday. So.
You
And
are busy.
in New York, let me know what I should do when I'm in New York City.
There you go.
Gonna go
Sally
visit.
Orgren, your guide. You're my guide for when I'm up in that neck of the woods. So Sally, give her some ideas.
There's this place called Tatter that is a textile library. I have an appointment to go with them. So Yeah.
Books library or samples library?
That's a really good question. Certainly books, but maybe more than books.
Ah,
Yeah, I had to pay an admission fee to make my appointment, so I think it's a
really? Wow.
special thing. Yeah. Yeah, I'm really,
Tatter.
yeah.
I'll have to check that out.
There's all kinds of cool things going on um, with, with the younger generation doing all kinds of cool stuff in
Mhm.
in various places all over the country. But yeah.
Well,
One of
thank
the
you.
things I was going to just say that one of the things I've been doing at Sanborn Mills, I'm very conscious about bringing the next generation of instructors along. And so we started a natural dye study group 3 winters ago. Anyone's welcome to join if you go on the net. And so we meet once a month on Zoom, and then those people can apply to be assistants for classes at Sanborn Mills. So I'm really trying to nurture the next generation.
Oh, that's a great idea. That's a great. Where are you finding this next generation? Are they students? Are they people with just an interest?
They're just coming to us. So we don't go looking for them. There's a lot of people that people in their 30s and 40s seem really young to me now. So, some are coming out of schools. We had somebody from RISD once. But yeah, I would say that, it's really hard for young moms to get any time to do anything, but when their partners are helpful, they get to sneak away and come do stuff with us. So yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Really interested in farming and growing their own stuff. And so it's inspiring to me.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm glad you're doing that. We're all eager to see what the next generation is going to be like. So good. Thank you. But we have to stop for today. I can't believe it. I know. Everybody's saying, no, 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 we need another hour. I know we do. But here you go. Sara Goodman, go to her
Is there a way
website.
that we can keep the chat open so that I can read it? Because I haven't been reading it.
Well, what I'm doing is copying it.
Okay.
And we can't keep it open because this will shut down, but I will keep saving the chat and I'll send that to you.
Okay, that would be great because
All
there's
right.
all kinds of people on here that I know. So
I know, it's amazing. They're all saying hi and
Yeah.
saying they took your class and how much they loved it.
Great. Well,
So if
thank you
you're
all so much. This was really fun for me. So
now on your website, it's been a while since I've been on there and I've slept since then, but you list on there where you're teaching, right?
no, I do not. I
Okay.
have not updated my website in an embarrassingly long time. But basically, all I do is teach at Sanborn Mills Farm
There we go.
and Sandwich. If somebody wanted me to come teach, get in touch with me. I'm not against
You
going.
travel?
Oh,
Travel
sure.
to teach?
Yeah, I travel to
All
teach.
right.
Yeah.
All right. I know of this guild in Atlanta that would be great if you would come teach there. I'll talk to them and tell
All
them,
right.
contact you. Again, we want to thank Sara for being on here and be sure you go check out her work. And if you are interested in it, contact her and have her come teach, or you can go to the mill and cadet classes there. If you go to their website, you'll see all the classes that are listed that she's going to be doing. We want to thank our sponsor again. Thank you again, San Antonio, for sponsoring this event and all the other Textiles and Tea you've sponsored. What a wonderful gift from a guild. Thank you all so much for thinking of us and keeping this program going. We appreciate it. We've got some, and if you would like to sponsor, please do go online, give me a call, give everybody a call and we can do that. But I was excited to tell you about the upcoming jurors talks. If you wanted to see the jurors talks at Convergence and wanted to see some of the images, here's your opportunity. We are doing it Zoom. So all of the 4 juried shows that we had at Convergence, as you can see on the screen, will be the jurors talk. We're going to do it online on Zoom. And it's great because the juror is going to talk about what they chose, what they saw in the works, what attracted them, on and on and on. It's a great opportunity to learn more, see beautiful work. And also, if you're thinking about entering, this is where you want to start. See what the jurors are looking for when they look at works. It's really great. If you're an HGA member, you'll get a discount on the entry fee, and you can sign up at weavespindye.org. Next big thing coming up is the Guild Retreat. I know some of the guilds have been saying, when are you doing this again? Well, here it is. The Guild Development Retreat will be January the 25th. It's all day online. And there's going to be it's opportunity to educate guild members, to motivate some of the guild members, and to inspire, with the idea that there's panels with people sharing their expertise, but there's also the opportunity to talk to each other. And that's so important for one guild member to say, how does your guild do it? Excuse me, we do it this way. What success have you had? Because our idea, excuse me, is to make sure the guilds are thriving, to not necessarily get bigger, but to thrive. And what opportunities can you give your members? What things can you add to your guild? Affiliate guilds get 4 free attendees. And if you want to, if you're not a member of the affiliate guild, or you're not one of the 4 that gets chosen to go, you can attend for $25. And again, you can go online or call and sign up for the guild retreat. Again, it's January 25th. If you have any questions, you can give us a shout. You can go online and see more about it. We want to thank everybody for their support for programs and donations through their membership. These are the way that keeps these programs going, whether it's the Jurors Talk or the Guild Retreat. And we really appreciate all of you who are supporting her. If you've missed any of these episodes, you can go back and watch them again. HGA's Facebook page, or you can go to the HGA YouTube. And if you do like watching it on YouTube, be sure you go to and sign up, because when you do, you'll get a notice saying that a new episode's been uploaded, and it'll keep you up to date. I don't know if most of you know this, but I am retiring, and Friday is my last day as an employee of HGA. It's been a wonderful 15 years. And I am going to do a few more Textiles and Tea, because I just can't give them up. I love doing this. But when you call in to ask me a question or complain about something I did, I won't be here. But there's wonderful staff who I will miss terribly, who are here and will help you in any issues you might have. And I'll be seeing you on Textiles and Tea for the next few weeks. If you're interested, we got another big guest next week I'm excited about. Her name is Chi-Ching Lee, and she does incredible work. You're going to want to watch it. Hope you all have a wonderful week. We will see you next Tuesday on Textiles and Tea. Happy tea.
Okay, guess we're done here.